Okay, hello everyone. I'm Camelia Fullerton,
My name is Melanie Cohen.
and today our presentation is going to be on Ebola virus outbreaks. So, what is the Ebola virus? The Ebola virus is a highly infectious pathogen that causes Ebola virus disease, EBD, from the Filoviridae family. It was first identified near the Ebola River in DRC in 1976, and the mode of transmission is direct contact with infected bodily fluids or contaminated surfaces. This virus is not airborne. Um, early symptoms, early symptoms are fever, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, and sore throat. Severe symptoms are vomiting, diarrhea, rash, internal and external bleeding, and is likely to originate from bats. The fatality rate is in the range of 25% to 90%, depending on the strain. So here, um, this is the Ebola virus structure. So this is basically just like a simplified cartoon of it. You have the envelope, and then you have the RNA inside of the envelope, and you have the matrix which the RNA is floating in. And you have the polymerase and the glycoprotein, which is what the virus uses to attach to the cell.
So now we're going to talk about what is the research on Ebola virus important. So public health protection, understanding the transmission to improve prevention and control, and develop better treatment and vaccines. Example, Ebola. Outbreak prevention and case early detection through rapid diagnosis. Mitigates zoonotic spillover risk from animal reservation like bats. Inform global preparedness strategy. Advancing global health security, strengthening health systems in vulnerable regions, and contributes to border pandemics preparedness effort. Scientific understanding, a study of the evolution and the host of the interaction, advanced knowledge in virology and immunology, economic impact, minimize the duration and cost of outbreaks to protect healthcare systems and local economies. In summary, the Ebola research is vital for controlling the virus itself, but it's also to encase or overall the capacity to respond this infectious disease. It supports public health initiatives, protects economy, advance science, and it will strengthen the global preparedness for any future outcomes. Next slide. So the history of the Ebola outbreaks. First recorded were in 1976 in Sudan Democratic Republic of Congo. CDI, DRC has 386 cases and 88% of fatality. Sudan has 284 cases and 53% of fatality rate. Key measures of the outbreak go from the 2000 to the 2001 in Uganda, 425 cases with 224 deaths, 52% fatality rate. 2014 to 2016 in West Africa, largest outbreak record, over 20,000 cases and 11,000 deaths. Initiated international response and vaccine development. In 2018 to 2020 in DRC, 3,470 cases and 2,280 deaths, 66% fatality. First use the RVS SIVO vaccine. In summary, from the discovery of the epidemic in 1976, it has taught lessons in outbreak controls and global preparedness for vaccine development. While early outbreaks were localized, later incidents, especially in the West Africa outbreak, we demonstrate that the virus potential to cause widespread devastation, influencing how the world approaches emerging infectious disease. Next slide.
So epidemiology, endemic regions include Central and West Africa, like DRC, Guyana, Sierra Leone, and Uganda. And as you see here in the figure, there's also Nigeria and Mali. Affected populations include rural communities near forests, healthcare workers and caregivers. The case fatality rate is 25% to 90%, once again, depending on virus strain and access to modern healthcare. The virus, the Ebola virus likely originated from fruit bats from the Parotopodidae family. And if you turn your attention to the graph here, it's about the cumulative incidence and case fatality of occupational Ebola virus disease. So you can see here that in West Africa, there's a lot more cases and case fatalities than in Central Africa, even though that the virus did occur in Central Africa, that it clearly made its mark in West Africa. And you see here like the case fatality is 49% in Guyana and 50.8% in Liberia and 72.5% in Sierra Leone. And the cumulative instances are 305 in Sierra Leone, 378 in Liberia, and 189 in Guyana. So clearly, this virus has made its mark in West Africa. Transmission. So primary transmission modes require contact with infected animals. So like bats, monkeys, gorillas, and in those kind of like areas, that's where you would get like the primary transmission. A secondary transmission requires direct contact via human to human interactions. So like bodily fluids like blood, saliva, sweat, urine, vomit, and contaminated surfaces and materials like needles and clothing. So as you can see, like the individuals that would probably be most exposed to this would probably be family members that are in contact with someone that has the Ebola virus, or possibly like health workers who are surrounded by individuals who have the Ebola virus. And secondary transmission usually is possibly like the highest transmission rate possible. And high risk situations include being in healthcare settings without the proper PPE, like mentioned before, and burial rituals involving direct contact with the deceased. So this virus is not airborne. It requires direct contact with infected animals and materials. So clearly, like the people or the individuals involved with treating people that have the Ebola virus need to protect themselves. And anytime someone dies or when family members are trying to be in contact with the body, that they also would need to protect themselves, or because the disease can be transmitted this way.
So now this image illustrates how the Ebola virus spreads from animals and intermediate host to humans and its target point, which it was a human body. It says that fruit bats are shown as natural reservoirs of the Ebola virus, meaning that the virus is maintained in the population without causing disease. So in the illustration, we can see that the bat goes from itself to the chimpanzee, to the gorillas, to the shrimps, and to the duiker. And they act as the intermediate host. And then lastly, the target is the human body. Once a virus has affected the humans, it primarily targets specific cells, including hepatitis, which is the liver cell, the epithelial cell, which is lining the blood vessels, at the pathogens, as we know, there are the immune cells like macrophages and dendritic cells, and it will cause symptoms such as like hemorrhagic fever, organ damage, and immune system dysregulation. Next slide. Impact of the Ebola outbreak. Public health impact involved fatality rates between 25% to 90%, excess healthcare strain involved overburdened systems in affected regions, high infection rates among healthcare workers due to lack of PPE. Survivors have long-term health issues, including joint pain, vision problems, and psychological traumas. Economic impact involved the national economies. There was a significant decline in the GDP across affected countries, reduced agricultural productivity, and trade disruption. Global costs were in the 2.2 billion range in places like Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Social psychological impacts included a various community disruption, fear and stigma towards survivors and healthcare workers, a breakdown of a traditional cultural practice like burials, and many orphanage children lost their parents and caregivers. In summary, we know that the Ebola outbreaks are far-reaching effects that still all beyond intimidating loss of life. They expose weakness in the healthcare system, devastate economy, and disrupt social structure. If we can address this, not only managing to outbreak effectively, but also implementing the measurements for long-term recovery and resilience building in the affected community. Next slide.
So in this picture, we have like a description of what was discussed in the previous slide about the impacts of Ebola. Um, and you see here it says less trade and transportation, reduced tourism, decreased agricultural production, decreased mining, fewer investors, high fiscal impact, high unemployment. Like all of these contribute to the GDP of each country in Africa, and it's important for the development. And less trade and transportation means that like less food gets to the people who need it and to the stores that need for the people to buy it, and reduce tourism. Sometimes tourism can be like a high like fiscal revenue for some countries. Um, Decrease agricultural production. Once again, like people who need the food can't get the food, which actually probably would exacerbate the virus outbreak. Decrease mining, so the natural resources of the country or the nation in itself would now like be just sitting there and they won't be able to use it in the way that they need to. Fewer investors, obviously, investors is like an important thing for any country to have. And anytime there's an outbreak, obviously no one wants to be like close to that because of the fact that it's like really bad for business. Um, High fiscal impact, once again, like it can affect the economy in a very negative way. And then high unemployment, like how are people supposed to show up to work when they're sick? So, so here we have diagnosis. Early clinical assessments include symptoms like fever, headache, muscle pain, unexplained bleeding. Um, it can be difficult to differentiate from other diseases like malaria typhoid. So in some cases, Ebola can show up as comparing to like other diseases. And in when you're trying to like figure out like which disease it is, that takes away the time that you'd need to actually like be able to like identify and solve. So that can be an issue as well. And laboratory tests involved, you have the RT-PCR, which is the reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction. This detects the viral DNA. And then you have the ELISA, which is the enzyme-linked immunoabsorbent assay. This identifies viral antigens and antibodies. And then you have virus isolation, which is the creation of cultures of the virus. However, this is rarely done because of the fact that it can be very high risk to the people making the cultures. And you don't want to start an outbreak in like the laboratory that you need for testing whether there's an outbreak overall. And then some challenges that can actually be an issue is that these tests are require special labs and biosafety requirements, and there can be delays in rural areas, which usually pose challenges. So anytime there's like an outbreak, you want to be able to decrease the amount of time between actually like realizing that that this is what you're treating and giving the treatment. So when people are too far away or when you cannot like reach the people that you're trying to treat, obviously that can make that process longer, which extends like the outbreak in itself.
So now this chart, the diagnosis for the Ebola virus, it explains like over time the using of different tests and the immune response. As we can see, the PCR RT red line, it will detect the virus on the early days, the few days, and is useful during the acute phase of the disease. Then if we go to the IUM, which is the orange line, this will appear around the day 6 and 8 after the infection, and it will indicate recent or ongoing infection. Then we can see the green light, which is the IgG, and this will appear later on the days 10 to 12 and remain in the body for much longer. Show long-term immunity and or past infections. So that chart shows like a timeline or how they are tested for various stages of the infection and to keep us track of the Ebola virus infection. Next slide. So treatments. Supportive care include rehydration of both oral and IV fluids, maintenance of oxygen and blood pressure levels, treatment for secondary infection. Specific therapies involve antiviral drugs, experimental therapies like remdesivir, monoclonal antibodies like IMSAP and IMGA shows improved survival rates. Vaccine use RBSCVO. This vaccine is highly effective in preventing AVD. It's used for outbreak, contaminated, and healthcare worker protection. So, in summary, Ebola treatment is a combination of supportive care to stabilize the patient, a specific therapies to directly combat the virus, and vaccines to prevent larger outbreaks. While this is a significant progress has been made, these measurements are the most effective when combined with strong public health effort and early detection. Next slide.
So here we have some prevention strategies. Vaccination. So the RVSVZEBOV is an effective vaccine for risk populations during the outbreak. So if this vaccine is taken relatively soon, between whether you feel like you have been infected with it or you are, this vaccine, you have the highest chance of actually doing better if you are have this vaccination or you get it relatively quickly. Hygiene practices. Regular hand washing with soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizers, and avoiding direct contact with bodily fluids of infected individuals. So you want to, the individuals who are surrounded by these people want to make sure that they're cleaning their hands well and on a timely manner, making sure that it's a priority because the virus is spread through touching things or touching infected materials and bodily fluids of infected individuals. So once again, we go back to healthcare workers where they have to make sure that they're on point with their routines as far as like keeping their hands clean and wearing the right equipment so that they are not directly in contact with this virus. Also, that applies to family members as well that are dealing with their sibling or maybe parent that is affected by this virus. And animal handling, avoid direct contact with bodily fluids of infected animals. So you don't want to go near an animal that's showing that it's possibly sick or in any kind of way. You don't know what it possibly has, so you just stay clear of it, best way that you can. Um, Also the ingesting of these animals too. You don't want to like ingest foods that you're not necessarily aware of, like what they're made of, just in case, like especially if you're in the middle of an outbreak, you just want to be as cautious as possible. And community education, raising awareness about transmission risk and safe burial practice traditions. So in Africa, there's a lot of like heritage and traditional things that they follow. And usually one of these practices are burial practice and traditions. And usually it's important to raise awareness about this issue because you don't want to be touching like a deceased family member or a deceased friend that has been infected with this because they still could possibly be contagious. So here is a visual description of what I mentioned before and how to prevent the spreading of the Ebola virus. So here, like I said, you want to avoid physical contact with people showing signs and symptoms of having like a contagious fever, red eyes, vomiting, stomach ache, maybe bleeding, and you don't know, and they don't know why, on washing your hands regularly with soap and clean water just to make sure that you're not spreading the virus unknowingly, or you might touch it to your face or touch it to your nose or your eyes in any kind of way. Do not shake hands with persons showing signs of Ebola. Once again, you want to stay clear of people, the person that could possibly be affected with this disease if they're showing that this virus and showing signs that like they are affected by it. You want to just keep your distance just so that you can avoid spreading it. Um, Keep away from bats, monkeys, baboons, and dead animals. Like, obviously, stay away from these animals because they could possibly be carrying this virus, and you don't want to like ingest it or touch it and then bring it back home and then start an outbreak. And avoid eating bush meat cooked. Cook all food very well. So you want to make sure that you're cooking your food well so that the temperatures are able to kill the virus. You're not ingesting it and allowing it to mutate within your body and once again spreading it.
So now we're gonna explain control measurements. Infections control in Herical series use of personal protective equipment, PPE, such as glove, mask, goggle, and protective suit to protect healthcare workers from exposures, isolate suspect and confirm cases, contact tracing and quarantine, identify and monitor contacts of infected individuals for 21 days, and immediate isolation of symptomatic contact. Safe burial practice, use trained teams to manage disease, body safely to prevent transmission. Rapid response teams, deployment outbreak response to team affected areas for contaminated and treatment. So control measure for Ebola will include PPE, isolating patients, contact tracing, safe burials, and relying rapid response to the team to stop outbreaks and protect the community. To control Ebola, we use protective gear. And this would be like a rapid response to the team to stop and spread quickly and effectively. As we can see on the image of the right, we're gonna see that we can use eye protection, hearing protection, hand protection, foot protection, head protection, respiratory protection, and body protection. Next slide. Challenges in managing outbreak. Healthcare system limitations. Limit healthcare facilities, supplies, and trained personnel. Overburdened system in epidemic regions. High infection rates among workers due to inadequate PPE. Delay in the detection, early symptoms resemble other diseases such as malaria and typhoid, lack of access to specialty labs, of timely confirmation, community resistance, distrust in healthcare workers and government intervention, unsafe burial traditions, resistant to change traditional caregiving practice, geographical and logistical barriers, difficult to access outbreak zones in the rural of the forest areas, limited roads, transport, and communication network, global preparedness and gaps, resources dependence on international aid slows initial response, limited access to supply during outbreaks also slow response. So with all of this information, we can manage the face of the challenges like weak health curves, delayed detection, community resistance, logistical difficulties, and global results, addressing the required strength of local system community engagement and improve the global preparedness. Next slide.
So, global response to Ebola. So, the World Health Organization, or WHO, coordinates international efforts in outbreak response and provide technical guidance. They established GORN, GOARN, Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network to deploy experts and resources. So the World Health Organization, this is the organization that actually follows international outbreaks and are actually set up and equipped to handle things like Ebola outbreaks. And they actually have been and a part of the previous and recent outbreaks that have happened and have actually sent teams and people and resources to those locations to make sure that the outbreaks are established, are like identified and contained and eradicated as soon as possible. And if not eradicated, super contained to the point where it's in a very like pointed spot that can be taken care of. And United Nations, the UN, they also created the UNMEER, which is the United Nations Mission for Ebola Emergency Response in 2014 that led the global Ebola crisis response. So in 2014, they led this response. So like the World Health Organization, they made sure to send resources and the right personnel that was actually equipped to handle this situation. And I'm sure they worked in unison with the World Health Organization, and together they were able to handle this crisis. You also have non-governmental organizations called NGOs, and the specific one is the Médecins Sans Frontières, which is MSF, which provided medical care and advocacy. So NGOs are important because they are actually not governmental sponsored, but they are able, and because of that, I believe that they're able to get into certain more areas and provide more like what is it called, like um more like not trying to find the word, um common support normally that you would that would be provided, but is what's needed to make sure that these outbreaks are actually contained in a proper way. Like they do the things that is necessary that some people wouldn't normally do, but they would have the courage to. And vaccine development, like Erbino vaccine, which provides an opportunity for routine vaccine for high risk health workers in endemic areas. So that vaccine is really important for healthcare workers so that they can stay alive and actually treat the people who are affected by this virus. And it's so important because they are our first line of defense. And in order for us to defeat outbreaks like this, we need people who are able to withstand it. So, research finding number one, development and efficacy of the RVSV-ZEBOV vaccine. So key finding from this vaccine is the recombinant vascular stromatous virus-based Ebola vaccine, which is what RVSV-ZEBOV stands for, demonstrates high efficiency in preventing Ebola virus disease. So due to this study's results revealed that a 2015 trial in Guinea during the West Africa outbreak showed 100% efficacy in individuals vaccinated immediately after potential exposure. So based on the observed absence of the Ebola virus disease in the cases of the vaccinated group. However, this study was noted that the sample size was limited and that there was uncertainties regarding the efficacy in certain populations, examples being children and compromised individuals. So they weren't able to get a complete data set on how it could affect all the population in the world. However, they were able to make a conclusion that if you did come to get vaccinated and when you possibly thought that you were exposed, that you 100% would not get the virus due to the fact that you came within a certain time period. The vaccine was approved by the FDA in 2019 and has since been used to control outbreaks during the 2018 and 2020 DRC outbreak. So it's clear that this vaccine is one of the frontline tools that are being used to fight the outbreak for Ebola, and it's working. So that's a really good thing. So in the impact of this results from this study results is that this breakthrough transformed the outbreak containment, making a significant milestone in Ebola-related fatalities. So having this vaccines means that we are able to cap the amount of fatalities that the virus can take, like the individuals that the virus can infect, we're able to cap that and figure out on helping the people who are already infected and seeing if we can find cures for them.
Research finding number two, persistence of Ebola virus in survivors. Key findings, Ebola virus can persist in the immune privilege, such as eye, central nervous system, and death for months after recovery. The persistence of the Ebola virus in the semen of male survivors has been a significant area of research. A notable study from the New England Journal of Medicine published in 2016 a report that the Ebola virus RNA was detected in the semen of a survivor for up to 9 months post-infection. Especially, the study found that 26% of the male survivors had Ebola virus in their semen at 7 to 9 months after the onset symptom. In some cases, the virus persists lead to secondary outbreak, as seen in Guinea in 2021. Impact highlights the need for long-term monitoring of survivors and safe practice to reduce potential emergence of the outbreaks. So this finding emphasizes not only the importance of the long-term monitoring, but also the need for survival-specific guidelines to manage risk, such as sexual practice and regular health screening to prevent further outbreaks. Next slide. Lesson learned from the past outbreak. Early detection and rapid response. Challenge delays in identifying outbreaks accelerate a spread. Lesson, strange disease surveillance system and local reporting networks. Community engagement. challenge, mistrust, and cultural practice hinder contaminate, lesson, involve local leader, respect cultural norms, provide clear communication to build trust and promote safe practice. Healthcare systems training, challenge weak health infrastructure and inadequate resources, lesson invest in health system, including training equipment and PPE for the health workers. Vaccine and treatment development challenge, limit tools for prevention and treatment in the early outbreaks. Lesson, develop continuous plans for logistics and including rapid development of response and team supply. So based on all of this, we can say that the past Ebola outbreak, early detection saved life, engaging communities will build trust, and strong healthcare systems are essential, and investing in vaccine for rapid response teams ensure a better prepare for the next crisis. Next slide.
So future management of the future of Ebola virus management. So vaccination and prevention. Routine vaccination for high-risk workers with the Ervebo vaccine and 500,000 vaccine dose for emergency use. So in this case, this point is saying that having routine vaccinations for high-risk workers is what will keep those workers able to work and not be sick so that they can help people who are sick and so that they can use their expertise to continue to be to give the help that they were meant to give. And through having 500,000 vaccine just in case that there is an emergency and that there is a random outbreak all of a sudden, that there will be the resources on hand to handle that outbreak versus having to wait for resources from the WHO organization or from the UN. They can have their vaccines on hand so that they can keep it contained until they can get more resources from people who can help them. And therapeutic advancements. Continue studies on the monoclonal antibodies like Nbenga and Inmanzeb recommended by the WHO organization, and the oral antivirals like obinsifir, obilsifir. Um, it's very important that we continue to push these therapeutic advancements because it's these advancements that could possibly get us a cure within the future, but definitely help us to tackle the outbreaks that are happening now. And so we have diagnostic innovations, improvements of rapid field testing for faster identification, isolation, and portable diagnostics for point of care in remote areas. So for the people like maybe like the NGOs, the people who go into like these areas and actually like find these people and try to help them in the best possible way, that they'd be given the equipment to be able to help them in these remote areas instead of having to have their hands tied because they don't have the right equipment. Community engagement, continued risk communication on the transmission of the prevention of Ebola, and adapting to safe cultural practices. So engaging the community and helping them to not like mistrust the government or mistrust the people that are trying to help them, and to involve them in knowing that, hey, like this outbreak doesn't have to get bad. All you have to do is do the right things, and we could actually keep this contained. And strengthening healthcare systems, better training for healthcare workers on infection control and improved outbreak readiness. It's always important that our healthcare workers are trained and ready to go and able to handle the things that they deal with every day, especially Ebola virus outbreaks. And these are our references. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.